Hello, and welcome back to Love, Faith, and Real Life, the podcast where we talk honestly about it all: love, life, relationships, healing, and what it really looks like to navigate love and faith in real life. I'm Larita Francois, your host, and today's episode is one I truly wish someone had set me down and explained to me early, okay? Before the confusion, before the self-blame, before the mistaking pain for passion. Because guess what? Here's a truth that we don't say loud enough. Love should not hurt. And I don't just mean physically, I mean emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Love should not hurt. Listen, if you've ever questioned your reality in a relationship, if you've ever felt smaller instead of safer, if you've ever told yourself, maybe I'm just too sensitive, maybe I'm just too much, this episode is for you. Because here on Love, Faith, and Real Life, we believe that love reflects safety. We believe that faith invites clarity. And most importantly, life requires honesty. Today, we're talking about how to recognize emotional red flags early, before attachment turns into endurance. And that's something very important to understand, the difference between attachment and endurance, and how avoiding or ignoring these emotional red flags can create that type of dynamic. I want to share before we dive in that today's episode includes discussions of emotional manipulation and emotional harm. So please take care of yourself as you watch and as you listen. At the end, I do share some resources for you to take care of self if you feel as though you need that. All right. Thank you for joining. Let's dive in. Why red flags are so easy to miss. Why are red flags so easy to miss? Do you know? I'll tell you why. Red flags are so easy to miss because most people don't walk into unhealthy relationships knowingly. Okay? When you think about it, red flags don't usually show up as danger signs. Not in the beginning, not early on. See, they show up as charm. They show up as intensity. They show up as, oh my God, I've never felt this way about anyone before, right? Especially if you grew up around chaos or emotional inconsistency like me, or learned early on that love meant surviving moods and silences or unpredictability. See, your nervous system may confuse familiar pain with connection. Let me say this clearly, and I'm going to just throw it right out there. If love feels like anxiety, confusion, or walking on eggshells, that's not chemistry. That's your body signaling discomfort. See, we often excuse early warning signs because we want the relationship to work. And we want it to work more than we want to feel safe. And we tell ourselves things like, they're just passionate, or they've been through a lot, that nobody's perfect. Maybe I triggered them somehow. Maybe something I said or did triggered them. But see, love that requires you to constantly explain yourself is not love asking you to grow. It's love asking you to shrink. And it's important to understand. I didn't say a love that requires you to grow is a problem. A love that requires you to constantly explain yourself is a love that's not asking you to grow, that's not asking you to be a better version of yourself. It's asking you to shrink. It's asking you not to reach your full potential as a person, as an individual, as a unit in this relationship. Okay? So I want to talk about some early emotional red flags. Let's talk about some emotional red flags that often show up early, but they get minimized because we want the relationship to work more than we want to be safe, right? So let's look at some of these emotional red flags that typically show up fairly early. Emotional red flag number 1. Intensity that moves too fast. What is that? Well, intensity that moves too fast looks like rapid emotional bonding, pressure to commit early, be in a relationship after only weeks of dating, a month, 2 months, right? 3 months. It looks like pressure to commit early. It also looks like, statements like, you're my soulmate, or I've never felt this way before. Listen, I think love is a beautiful, amazing thing. I know that it is, but it is also very important to establish a foundation and to get to know the person that you're actually spending time with. If you believe that they're your soulmate and you believe that you want to spend the rest of your life with them, it is important to know some things about them at their core and to the depths. So emotional red flag number one is intensity that moves too fast, rapid emotional bonding, pressure to commit early, and statements like, you're my soulmate, or I've never felt this way before. Connection takes time, guys. Rushing intimacy often kind of skips a really important aspect of a relationship, which is trust building. Healthy love grows steadily. Unsafe love rushes closeness to create attachment. Okay? Let's move on to red flag number 2. Control disguised as care. And this sounds like, I just worry about you. I don't like when you talk to them. I'm protecting you. See, it's important to understand that care does not isolate you. Concern does not limit your freedom. If someone's love comes with restrictions, monitoring, or guilt, it's not protection, it's control. And that's important to understand, okay? If someone's love comes with restrictions, if it comes with monitoring your every move, who you speak with, who you talk to, who you engage with, or if it's attached to constant guilt, it's not protection, it's control. Let's look at red flag number 3, emotional invalidation. And this one happens, I think, more often than not in relationships very early on. But a lot of times we don't focus on it the way that we need to. And that's emotional invalidation. That is, pay attention like when you express your feelings and how that person responds. So if you're expressing your feelings and you hear, you're too sensitive, or that didn't happen, you're overreacting. That's not communication, guys. That's emotional erasure. And, healthy partners get curious about your feelings and what you're experiencing and what you're going through. Even if they don't quite understand it, they're not just going to minimize your experiences. Emotionally unsafe partners dismiss them. They dismiss your emotions. They dismiss your experiences. Oh, that didn't happen. Oh, you're overreacting, or you're too sensitive. You're too emotional, right? So a healthy partner is going to want to understand, or at least give you the floor, the room to experience your emotions and allow you to express yourself without their response minimizing what you're going through, right? All right, let's look at emotional red flag number 4. Is inconsistency between words and actions. And this is a big one. And this looks like apologies without change, big promises without accountability, and even more so, affection followed by withdrawal. And I'll tell you something, this aspect of relationships, this red flag is really hard to recognize, because when you're in that dating phase and you're getting to know each other, there is a lot of promising, there is a lot of affection, right? But you don't tend to see the apologies without change. You don't tend to see big promises without accountability, or affection followed by withdrawal. You don't tend to see that early on. You tend to kind of overlook that because you're getting to know each other, right? You're learning each other. And that is an important aspect of trying to understand your partner. But it's important to know that consistency creates emotional safety. Confusion creates anxiety. All right? Patterns matter more than potential. And I need you to remember that. Patterns matter more than potential. Okay? Let's look at emotional red flag 5. You feel responsible for their emotions. If you're constantly managing your tone, your timing, or your needs to avoid conflict, pause. Love should feel like partnership, not performance. And that is important to understand. Love should feel like partnership, not performance. You and your partner have to be there for each other. You have to support each other in a way that is related to your partner's language, how they understand, how they perceive information. Okay. So now that we've looked at some of those emotional red flags, things that you really should take a look at in your relationships, whether it's a very new relationship early on or whether you're in a long term relationship or marriage, it is important to connect with your partner, to reevaluate, to look at where you're headed together. Is that trajectory the same? Has it changed? Are we still on the same page? Are we still in the same book? Right? So these emotional red flags, these things to look for, aren't things to only look for if you're in a fairly new relationship, but these are things that are important to kind of recalibrate your relationships, whether it be marriage or long-term relationships. So now that we've taken a look at some of those emotional red flags, let's look at, let's reframe what healthy love actually feels like, okay? Because it's important to know that love should feel safe to speak. Love should feel calm, not chaotic. Supportive, not punishing. And consistent, not conditional, right? Love is supposed to be a consistent act. Love is a verb. Okay, love is supposed to be a consistent act, not conditional, not attached to your performance. I love you only if you're making a certain salary. I love you only if you're strong enough to handle anything life gives you. I love you only if you're doing the things for me that I want and I say I need you to do to make me happy. Love is consistent. It should be consistent, not conditional. Love does not require you to walk on eggshells. It doesn't require you to stay silent, to over explain, or most importantly, to earn basic respect. Okay? You're not asking for too much, right? You're asking the wrong person. And that is what is important to understand. You're not asking for too much. You deserve to be loved in the way that you need to be loved. You deserve to be communicated with in your love language, right? You deserve these things. So it's not that you're asking too much. You're likely asking the wrong person. Let's dive into trusting your body and discernment. Let's talk a little bit more about what happens when you are in a situation that there's some emotional red flags, or you're in a situation that may not be the best situation for you. See, because your body often recognizes danger before your mind does. Like, the tight chest, the constant anxiety, the exhaustion after conversations. Those are signals, not weaknesses. Intuition isn't loud, right? It's not always loud. It's persistent. And it's something feels off. You don't need proof to pause, right? Awareness is not betrayal. It's self-respect. And I can tell you clarity is a powerful, powerful thing. If something feels off, you don't need pictures. You don't need proof to pause and say, okay, something feels off. We need to have a conversation about it. Something feels off. I have this level of awareness, and awareness isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. Self-respect will always lead you to where you're supposed to be. Before we close, I want to ground this conversation in faith, because for many people, faith has been used to justify staying in relationships that were actually harmful to them. And I want to say this clearly, but also gently. God does not require you to endure emotional harm to prove your faith. Love that reflects God's heart does not confuse you. It doesn't control you or silence you. See, scripture tells us that love is patient and kind. Love isn't, manipulative. It's not humiliating, and it's not fear-based. Peace is a fruit of the spirit, not anxiety. God is not the author of chaos and manipulation or humiliation, right? So if a relationship consistently pulls you away from peace, if it makes you doubt your worth, your voice, or your discernment, that is not love asking you to stay. That is wisdom asking you to pay attention. Sometimes the most powerful, most faithful thing you can do is step back and say, God, show me where safety lives. Leaving, setting boundaries, or choosing yourself is not a lack of faith. Often is actually an act of obedience. See, you're allowed to choose relationships that reflect the love God shows you. Steady, compassionate, and safe. Take a breath here. Take a breath. Take a moment to think about that. You're allowed to choose relationships that reflect the love God shows you. Steady, compassionate, and safe. Well, steady means you're going to be there. Even when life is a roller coaster, which is all the time, we're going to ride this roller coaster together. Compassionate. When I'm dealing with stuff, when I'm hurting emotionally, mentally, physically, you can give me compassion. You can empathize with me, whether you understand or not, that this is a time that you need to show me compassion as God shows us. And then safety. I don't just need safety, to have weapons in the home to protect the home. I need safety in my heart. I need safety in my mind that you and I can trust each other with our vulnerabilities. We can be safe mentally and emotionally and spiritually here with each other. And it's important to know that if you think that you're in a relationship that could be toxic or you're not in the right place, asking the right person for the right things, you don't have to figure everything out today. Awareness is enough for this moment. Because remember, love shouldn't hurt. Not your body, not your spirit, not your sense of self. Red flags are not warnings of what might happen. They're information about what already is. If this episode stirred something in you, please don't ignore it. Talk to someone safe. Ask questions. Seek support. You don't need permission to protect your peace. If you or someone you know is experiencing emotional or physical abuse, help is available at the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-SAFE or thehotline.org. I want to say that I really appreciate you spending this time with me. Life is a roller coaster. Who we choose to ride that roller coaster with is one of the most important decisions that we will make, because that dictates a lot about how you will perceive your journey. So it's important to know that you deserve a love that reflects God's love, that reflects compassion, that reflects safety, a love that is steady. Remember, the Bible says that love is kind. Love isn't boastful. It's not prideful. It's not manipulative, right? Thank you so much for being here, for spending this time with me. This is Love, Faith, and Real Life, where we choose healing over hiding, all right? Where we choose truth over tolerance, and that's the real. And where relationships that feel safe enough to grow can grow and flourish. Until next time, take care of your heart and honor what it's been trying to tell you. Thank you, and I will see you next time right here on Love, Faith, and Real Life.